So this is a bit of a different episode. We all go into meetings, we all go into sessions. Some of us are podcasters, we go into podcasts. And right before we go in, we all try to set the right mindset before going into it. But we don't necessarily talk about what we actually do to get the right mindset. I'm actually waiting for a guest to come in. We're about to record a podcast episode. But I thought what would be interesting is to talk to all of you, but what I do to set the right mindset before I get into any conversation, any meeting, or any podcast. But before I go there, I want to make sure you hit subscribe and smash the bell icon. Go straight into cracking. The first thing I actually think of before I get into any meeting or podcast. So the first thing I think about is that what do I really want to learn, achieve, or get out of what I'm getting into? Now, we all go into meetings with agendas, but we don't really go into meetings or into podcasting. What do I really want to learn from this? What do I really want to achieve from this? It has to be like one line. It could be the fact that, okay, it's this person I'm talking to. I really want to learn about X from them. Write that down. If you're getting into meetings, saying, I really want to be able to achieve X thing. And we assume we know these things, but we don't often put them down on paper. We don't often look at them and say, oh, wait, that's actually what I wanted. When you come out of it, what you don't want to say, oh, that's the one thing I wanted. That's the one thing I really missed. The second thing I do, and this is an interesting one, right? Because the second thing I do is that I think about what this guest or this person I'm meeting gets asked too often, and what do they not get asked at all? There's always a usual set of questions you get, right? If you're talking to a popular person, they're so used to going into almost like, it's like auto mode, right? They've asked the same questions, they have auto responses, they do that. But there's often so much more you can actually learn, so much more you can dig out from them, which you don't get to know because nobody asks them. Same goes to any kind of interaction, right? Everybody has a default setting. What you should try and do is get them out of that. Because once you go out of default setting, you're no longer being mechanical, you are actually being human. And when you want a fruitful interaction, you want a fruitful discussion, what you really need to look for is to get people into human mode and out of that robotic mechanical mode. The third thing, it's about how you start any interaction. They say that the first step is what matters because that sets the context for how everything works. How you start any interaction, let's say you're giving a presentation, let's say you're hosting a podcast. What is the first thing you asking everybody? What are you setting the mood with? Because the mood you set in the beginning is mostly what stays till the end. And if you want to set the right mood, think of what would make everybody kind of loosen up a little bit. What would make everybody dig a little deeper? What will make them smile? I often ask my guests about their childhood and how they were when they were kids. Sometimes I ask them about their founding story if they're entrepreneurs. If I'm walking into a presentation, I try to ask people something which just makes them smile. I often say that, what do you do this weekend apart from talking about the weather? That often makes people smile. Because it's so random. We all talk about the weather all the time, right? It's the most default thing we always do. But find something that loosen people up, that'll get them to dig deeper, get them to flow a lot better. And that sets the right mood for everything to kind of go. Another point that's really important is for you to think about, how do I make the people I'm meeting feel safe? We often get into interactions and conversations that become, become things where they feel unsafe. Am I going to be asked something that's uncomfortable? Is someone going to pick up that one, big issue that I faced in life and really dig deeper into that, make me talk about it again and again? And you can see that often. I mean, there are many podcasts I'm sure you watch where you've seen people genuinely feel uncomfortable because they're asked things which which are traumatic instances where they've gone through a certain amount of stress, and you asking them to recount that, and that most times is not what they really want to do. So you got to make them feel safe. You got to make them feel like the space in which you're in, where this interaction is happening, is safe for them to be able to share whatever it is that you want them to share. And also safe for you to kind of talk about whatever it is that you want to talk about. Safety goes both ways. And the safer you make a space, the more healthy the interactions are. The more healthy the interactions are, the more you actually get out of it. And it also kind of sets a bond. It creates a bond between you and the person you're talking to in a way that it continues beyond that interaction, beyond that meeting, or beyond that podcast. You leave, with a certain feeling. And that's the most important one. That's the last point I want to talk about, is that how do you want your guest on your podcast, or that person you're meeting, to feel when they're leaving that interaction? Do they feel lighter? Um, Do they feel happier? Do they have a feeling of, oh wow, that was engaging? I'm always gotten a lot more energy because of how this conversation went. Or are they leaving saying, oh my God, that was so draining. I felt like I was being interrogated. What a waste of my time. You got to think about how you want someone to feel, how you want to feel at the end of every interaction. And so all the steps I spoke about lead to this last point. Is that how do you want someone to feel when you finish that interaction, when you finish that meeting, when you finish that presentation or finish that podcast? These are the points I generally look at, I think about right before I sit down with someone, have a conversation. Um, I've been doing this in meetings and presentations for years, and it's become one of those tools I use as I've hosted 600 odd podcasts in the last 4 odd years. And it becomes this tool which helps me come to the right headspace, build the right mindset, and kind of make sure that I'm setting my own feeling right at the start and the end of every interaction. I hope you got value from this. I hope this was an interesting episode for you to kind of tap into. If you want more pieces like this, and if any of these points resonate with you, do let us know in the comments. And before you go, also make sure that you hit subscribe and smash that bell icon, maybe a little lightly. Make the bell icon feel nice as well. I'll see you on another episode of Take a Pause with me, Varun Duggirala.